This is 2OF Entertainment.
Well, and we're back, Paul.
We're
The
back.
team.
We had a bit of a hiatus for a little bit of the summertime. I've been busy, and
Yeah.
I know artists and people are back, kind of hunkered down in their studios and
Yeah.
getting back to life a little bit. I think it's been a busy summer, so I'm really looking forward to our fall season here, and we are.
Yeah, I thought well, from our conversations, I thought I'd actually lost you. I thought you'd taken up being a roofer as your new profession
Glad to get
going
off
forward.
the roof. Yeah. No. Well, as an artist myself, you have to do those jobs. You're not flush with cash. So, but I'm a bit fussy about how I like things done. So, yeah.
Oh, does
It
that
was fun.
surprise me? As an artist, you're all a bit pickety, I think.
Oh, well, we're fine. Anyway, we got an opening season here with a great artist, and Will Rafuse was in Vancouver. Now lives in New Brunswick in St. John. So it's like moving from one side of the country to the other. But his work is phenomenal. I think more in the pop art sense of things. That's kind of what Will does, and I think we just kind of want to talk to him about that. He's been doing it for many years. We'll just kind of go through his journey a little bit, the process of how you transition and how an artist thinks and goes through a process of this is where I am today and this is what I like doing, and he's finally at a very mature stage in his work right now, and it's changing again. And but he takes all the knowledge from what he's learned previously, and I think understanding how that works for an artist, like if you're an emerging artist, you got to listen to this process because it's where you start isn't always where you end. It's just one of
Yeah.
those processes. So I'd love to bring Will in here, and
Okay, well, we'll do that, and then I will say goodbye to you both and come back and talk to everyone at the end of the show because I'm the one that's going to ask the difficult questions right at the end.
yeah,
Have a
you
great
do.
show, gentlemen. Have a great show.
You bet. Hey, Will, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Paul. Thanks very much.
Well, that's good. We had a little bit of a preamble yesterday to make sure things work, and I think everything's working fine. And anyway, we kind of, we're starting our season off, I guess our fall season, and I'm really pleased that we have you with us. We'll just talk here for a little bit, and then we'll start showing some of your images that give a people a sense of what you do, like, and maybe where you kind of started in your career. Were you a graphic designer at any time in your career, or graphic artist of some kind?
Well, it's kind of funny. My whole life I wanted to be an artist, but my father, who went through the dirty 30s and everything else in life, said that being an artist is a hobby. You need to have a job. So for the first 35 years, I basically didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I worked off and on at the post office, driving a postal truck. And one day I saw an exhibit of the graduating class from Capilano College in the Sinclair Center in Vancouver when I was working there as a postie. And I talked to them, and I got really intrigued that I would go back to school at 36 years old to be a graphic designer. But once I started taking the course, it was a 3-year course, and then another year at Vancouver Community College computer graphics. Just I was a little bit more computer literate than I learned. But once I started taking the classes, the ones that I focused on the most were painting, because it was kind of in my heart from the very beginning. And in the summertime, I would go to Stanley Park, Painter's Corner, which is, I think there's been artists selling their work there for almost 100 years. Anyways, the tourists mostly that were taking cruise ships from San Francisco, San Diego, coming up to Alaska, they would stop in Vancouver, and I was displaying my work there, like I said, on the weekends. And I really realized that is definitely what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a full-time artist.
Yeah.
So that's basically how I started.
Yeah. that's, and I kind of relate to that. Not so much I think we had similar parents. My dad was the same thing. Like, get a job, you get a pension in, do something. He worked in he worked as in the armed forces for years. And then even when he got onto Civvy Street, as they say, he still had a government job, and he had to stay alive that way. And I've always wanted to be an artist myself. Same thing. I almost the same pathway. And I then became a graphic designer, went to college, and at that time it was a college, and studied and became a graphic designer for any number of years. But now I'm trying to do more painting and things like that. So I sort of did that on the side, but the same as you, I went through that very similar process of, I want to be an artist. And I can't remember when I haven't wanted to be an artist as a kid. And my dad was always, no, think of something different, get a trade, do something. And I mean, I'm kind of glad I did do a few things, but, and the art thing is a good thing to do. Anyway, the types of work that you painted in the early years, I'm going to get David to start up our images. So we'll just get a little smaller. We can just talk about there we go. So one of our we got a number of slides to show this process. So I think people can see these things, where you were. So can you tell us about this character? I mean, we're going to show a number of these things, where this character came from.
Well, I was actually showing my work, like I said, in Painter's Corner when this idea came to my mind. My wife and I she completely supported me in going back to school, becoming an artist, and said, a lot of times we were talking, and we came to the realization that this was around 97, 98 when this style came into, or this group of individuals that I started painting. We realized that people were making the kitchen a focal point of their home, and food and drinking were the two main things that obviously you do when you have parties over or people come to your house. So I came up with the idea of doing chefs, and I went to I was still working at the post office, and I went to Kim's Prints on Denman Street in Vancouver to try and find out where Kiff Holland, one of my instructors at Tap College, and he was a published artist. I tried to find out from them who the publisher was, and as it turns out, it was Canadian Art Prints in Richmond, BC. So I went and visited them and immediately signed a contract. So that's how these kind of grew into about a 5-year term that I was with them. And then I realized, I didn't want to be a published artist anymore. I wanted to get in, focused on higher end galleries and stuff.
Yeah. No, it's a very very recognizable image. It becomes. I remember my daughter, when she first moved out into her condo or apartment, she had a couple of these pieces in her place, as you mentioned it before. It was just so it's crazy, that your kids are now collecting something else that somebody else was doing like that. Normally, it's just my stuff was sitting on their walls all the time. They had I needed storage space for most of my material, but go to now. These are really these little caricatures, and I almost call them that. This is it's kind of American Gothic with a Canadian way, with the cat analogies are just kind of fun. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about how these ones evolved?
Okay,
did you do a number of them?
I did a lot of cats.
Yeah.
Because another thing, people love cats. I know so many artists have cats, but so many people have cats and dogs. So I painted a number of cats and dogs, but mostly the cats really took off. People really found them to be quite interesting and very humorous. Yeah. Similar to
how big did they get, Will? How big are these pieces?
This piece, I believe, if I recall correctly, it's 48 by 48.
Wow.
It might be 36 by 36. I'd have to look it up, but this painting it's 25 years old, and like you said, it's my take on American Gothic from Grant Wood, American artist.
Right.
And I called it Americat Gothic.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the names just kind of come to you when you have a smile when you're working on your work a little bit when you come up with a couple of names that are a little quirky that
Oh yeah.
yeah, I
And
think
many times, if I didn't come up with a good name, my wife did. But this piece, I was always inspired by many artists, as most of us are, and Grant
yeah,
Wood always appealed to me, and I always found that painting American Gothic to be so
yeah,
intriguing. What is it about? And it was just
yeah,
so I used the actual background of his painting and then put these, and it's funny, it sold basically right away to a Canadian that lives in the States. But
yeah,
I always thought afterwards because uh, in the original painting, he's got I can't remember now, it's either a hoe or a shovel. And I thought I should have put a fishing line with a fish on the end of it. Maybe for a cat, it would have been pretty good. But I mean, I was very happy. And I still laugh at it. When you put it up right now, I went, yeah, there's that
yeah.
piece.
Well, it's part of an era, right? That you kind of went through, and you find that some of those early pieces were groundwork for what you're doing now. Is that
Well, I was definitely intrigued and interested in really like Andy Warhol, full color,
yeah,
lots of color in my paintings. And right from the very start, like even some people, one time I went back to Kim's Prince when they had my stuff on the walls selling it. And it was just interesting to go in there because the customers didn't know who I was. And I would listen to some of them. And I remember a kid was there buying that picture of Jack the bartender, the first one that he showed. And his dad said, "Oh, it's just too gaudy, the colors." And I'm sitting there laughing. I'm going, "That's really interesting that the older guy didn't like it, but the young kid did." And it was like that so many times that the feedback I'd get in Stanley Park, different, people coming from all over the place, like Europe, whatever. And it was always like they were drawn to talk to me, and it was
yeah,
really amazing. And I've been very fortunate because basically everything I've painted I've sold, so that's quite unusual. I know a lot of artists in Vancouver that are incredible artists, and they've got a lot of paintings.
yeah? Hordes of paintings. What you did, I think, is really important for other artists to understand. Go out and hawk your wares. Stand on the street and try and sell it, or go to those events where people come and you show your work. It teaches you so much: how to speak to people, how to listen to people, how to see what people like. It's an important journey that I think every artist needs to go through at once in their life, whether you like it or not. I mean, some people, artists, a lot of times just hate doing those kind of things, but standing back and letting somebody walk into your booth and you just listen to what they say, that's kind of fun thing to do as well, because you get a very sincere feedback without you asking for it, right? Or have somebody else man your booth and then you listen. It's one of those things.
Absolutely, and free advice. I'll tell you a couple of stories. Like the first one, the very first day when I went to Stanley Park, my wife phones me and she says, "How's this going?" And I said, and I'm not typically that shy, but when you're trying to promote your own work, you probably have a little bit more shy at the beginning of your career or whatever, because you lack confidence and you're not sure how people are going to react to your work or whatever. But anyways, I told her, I said, there's so many people walking around, and I said I literally feel like I'm standing here naked. Like it was just like that shows how nervous you are, and you have to overcome that because nobody's going to promote your work if you can't do it.
That's right.
And you have to be able to approach galleries or whatever. You have to get the courage to come forward and say, "Yeah, I'm going to do this," and that's what you do.
Yeah. You're right. It's a way to build some courage within yourself and confidence. I guess I call it confidence probably more than courage, but I think it's confidence. And when you do walk into the gallery, you bring a persona with you. Like it feels like, are you confident when you first walk in the door to that gallery? And you know, typically now they don't like you just walking in with a portfolio. You got different ways of doing it now, but in the early days, you could walk into it with a portfolio of a few pieces under your arm, and you could acquire a gallery, that'll take you on or try you anyway. But
Yeah.
but it's changed.
I have one more interesting story. I think it's interesting. When you said about people giving you advice or comments to critique your work or whatever, an American who was coming through the park said to me, "Will, your work is amazing. I'd like to see where you are 30 years from now." But he said, "Your prices are too low." And so I told him, I said, "Well, I'm just starting out or whatever." And he said, "If you don't value your work, nobody's going to value your work. The people
That's
are going to go, 'Wow, I got a really good deal today. I only paid $100, $200, $300 for this piece. I just think it's fantastic. I think this guy's going to go somewhere." And his analogy of how he told me, he said, "Will, you gotta try and remember, this is 25 years ago, more than that." He said, "You got to get your prices up to the $3,500, $5,000 range." And I said, well, I just laughed at him, and I said, "Well, that would be a wonderful goal." But I said, obviously not in the park, whatever. But the next year, I did raise them considerably on his advice, and I've always thought about him. I wish I had his name, but he told me, he said, the people that if you put it at $1,000 or $1,500, he said, a lot of the common folk that come by to see you, that I don't mean to be degrading common folk, but a lot of people that aren't connoisseurs necessarily of buying art, they might want your piece, but they can't afford the $1,500 because they need a new couch, they need a car repair, or they haven't been on holiday for 5 years." And he said, so the priority is one of those things, especially with a couple. So I just thought that was a really good advice that he gave me. Because he said the ones that have $5,000, he said it doesn't hurt them. He said they want to support you. They want to encourage you to go even further in your career. So,
right.
And I didn't know this guy. He just came by and he thought he'd give me a little bit of advice. So who knows who he was? Probably an artist.
He could have been. He could have been as well, because he raised his prices and he could afford to go on a trip.
Yeah.
A lot of times it can be that way as well. So you can make a living as an artist. It's just like I said, if you have the confidence, but you also have the skill set, I think, and you got an idea. Like you do a little bit, like you and your wife did a little bit of research. What should I paint that I like to paint? Well, those things. A lot of artists paint things that maybe they think a market is there, and they'll paint into a market a little bit. I think when you paint for a ship crowd that's coming through, is it size that they can take on the board with them, or do you ship it home for them? One of those kind of things, right? And we have a number of artists that I guess still feed that market, that go up and down the coast on cruise ships and things, and it is a big deal. But yeah. Anyway,
you described it that way because when I first started on, I had, most of my paintings were less than probably 20 inches wide. And I typically have, that's a rectangular picture, but I typically have always painted square pictures. I just feel it's like a snapshot of something that someone could have on their wall.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I painted them small so that people could take it in their luggage. But if my pieces were any bigger, it's really amazing how I was trusted as an artist. They would give me their money, and they'd say, "We're going to Alaska. We don't want to carry it with us. Can you ship it to this address?" Yeah. Pretty amazing that you're treated that way.
Yeah, no, it's there's a trusting level. I think generally, and I'm very proud of that, Canadians have a little bit of a trusted nature about them. They're, it's rare that happens with somebody hawking their wares on the street, that you're going to trust somebody with your Visa card or whatever. But it's pretty amazing that we had the luxury of that, and appreciate that very much. So was Chef here part of your bartender series as well? Was he an extension of that? Yeah.
Yeah. So Canadian Art Prints, when they published this work, they did a number of different chefs and bartenders, and they actually distributed them to over 50 countries. And another thing my dad said to me, he's still around at that time, and he said, "This is amazing. Imagine that you get a royalty check, but on top of that, they're giving you free promotion of your name all around the world."
Yeah. So like I said, my daughter didn't have an original one of yours, but she had a piece of yours that was, I guess it was like was it on a plaque kind of nature? I can't remember now. Like it was on I think it was something like that. It's kind of a plaque.
Yeah, they made some on plaques also.
Yeah, I think it was some kind of like that. And they had a little, like it was kind of like the Home Sense thing. You could have put it up, and it is what it is. We all have to start somewhere, and you know what? Making a living is the first thing. At least you didn't have to, clean a street or, deliver mail again as much, maybe. But you know what? Delivering mail is still a great thing.
I loved my postie job because I drove a red step, one of those, step bands all around Vancouver. I thought it was amazing. I mean, sometimes I'd stop, get my hair cut, or go get groceries while I'm working, whatever. It was a really wonderful job. I thought it was.
And also you get to know the neighborhoods and you get to know the people. I think.
Oh, exactly. And I worked in Main and Hastings, which was a vibrant area of Vancouver.
Oh, yeah.
But it was really an interesting job. I did quit just before my 45th birthday forever. I thought to myself, I'm either in this or I'm not in it. And I'm not saying it was easy. I said earlier that I've sold all my work, but
Yeah.
you have your ups and downs. And I knew at one point when I wanted to get into galleries and stuff that I would get out of the marketing part of it. But it's still, if I had an opportunity to get some free promotional, especially in the city of Vancouver, where I was located at the time, so that possibly that would help me get into galleries and stuff. But to get in higher end galleries, they want to have exclusive in the city, and they don't want you promoting your work, which makes total sense. They don't want it to be a marketing image anymore.
Yeah, I get kind of concerned with that. The so-called ownership of artists, and I think the gallery misses out on quite a bit when the artist doesn't promote himself a little bit. That doesn't mean sell your work, but you still sell your work through the gallery, but there's a trust relationship that the gallery and the artist have to have. And it doesn't always have to be contractual, but you go through a stage of trust. So do you have a number of galleries that handle your work?
I did have a number of galleries. My wife was ill for the last 3 years, and so I took myself on the Vancouver gallery. I've always been in the Vancouver gallery, but I took it out because I couldn't supply enough work because I stopped painting basically for 3 years to look after her. So I'm just getting back into painting right now, full time. And I'm in a gallery in Boston on Newberry Street, the Arden Gallery, which I've been with off and on since 2010. And an interesting story about that also, when you submit your work to an art gallery, a lot of times you think, oh, if I could only get in this art gallery, like this would be amazing, whatever. And then you get turned down. But all of a sudden, a door opens up and someone says, yes, well, we'll try your work. And Zola from the Arden Gallery, she said to me, Will, we're going to give you a try. And I had a show there, and it was pretty good. But 2 years later, we kind of parted ways because I just didn't have my work to the level that it should be at to be in that gallery at least. And one day out of the blue, she phoned me back. She said, "Well, I told you I was watching you, and I'd like you to come back." So that was, I think, 2018. But the interesting thing that she said to me one time, she said, "Will, do you know how many Americans want to be in my gallery?" She said, "I hope you realize how fortunate." I said, "Zola, are you kidding me?" I realized right away the opportunity that this person gave me. It was unbelievable. And talk about a boost in your self-esteem. All of a sudden you want to paint every minute of every day just to get more work done and do it better.
Well, yeah. And them feeling confident in you. I think that's important as well. Like you said, there's, probably hundreds of artists that want to be in that gallery, and they have some very good artists in the States, and they're prolific. Some of them are very prolific. So we jumped from your bar and chef series, and I said, all of a sudden you see this Fruit Loops, right? This highly realistic, but it's really pop art now. Yeah. Is this Andy Warhol thing kicking in on you a little bit? And where you're going with, I've seen the Coca-Cola bottles and different things like that. I mean, they're very high realism, they're high realism pieces.
Yeah, well, this is definitely in my photorealism state that I'm at now. This is about 8 years ago I painted this painting, 8 or 9 years ago. Anyways, one day going down the grocery store, I saw this kid being pushed in the cart with his mom, and I love watching people's reactions to different things. And they were in the cereal aisle, and I don't eat this kind of cereal. I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat sugar or whatever. But I was just watching this kid with his mom, and he was pointing at all these characters. And I came to realize Warhol, the way he pushed marketing about, doing the mobile gas and all the different imagery that he did of, big corporations in America. And I thought, I'm going to do these cereal boxes because they've used, like Warhol did, imagery that would appeal to little children. The kids don't have a clue what they're buying. Of course, once they taste it, they might go, "Oh, I love that one." But so imagine this kid being pushed, and he was probably only 4 or 5 years old. He's in the buggy, and the mother said, "Well, which one do you want?" And he's pointing. He's got his hands all over the place. And I just thought this is going to be a good one. So I painted. I believe I painted six different cereal boxes.
Yeah.
Captain Crunch.
Well, you look at, they've done an awful lot of research in the building of those products. They know who's buying it. They know how to attract their market, right? And now you've taken that to another stage, and you've found a market that probably, in their minds, go back and say, "Oh, I remember as a kid buying those Fruit Loops, and I was sitting in Mom's carriage when we were in the grocery store." But you pick up on a fond remembrance on people, that a nostalgic thing almost at point, but it's even beyond that. Like Warhol, I think, was similar, nostalgic, whether it be Marilyn Monroe or the Kennedy series or the things. It's a moment in time that people want to encapsulate and be a part, have a part of what they are, right? And I think these things give those people that opportunity to have a piece of that. But it's just, and I look at the amount of stuff on the cover of this cereal box. It's full. I mean, it's agitative. There's energy in it. Like, there's a ton of stuff there.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And amazing to paint the detail from, the Fruit Loop itself, which all taste the same. They're all different colors. They have one flavor, sugar.
Yeah.
There is no strawberry, grape, banana. There's none of that. It's just one flavor, just different colors. But it's kind of a fun product, and it probably was fun to paint as well. I would think
I really enjoyed doing that series.
So are you an oil painter, or are you acrylic painter?
When I started out at Cap College, we started with acrylic, which I loved. I thought it was just amazing. And then we switched to oil. Like Jeff Holland was the instructor, and he said, "Now we're going to do oils." And as soon as I started using oils, I just went, "This is for me." And typically the way I paint right now, I paint between 5 to 8 paintings at the same time. They're usually quite large. Like I said, up to 48 by 48, or sometimes 60 by 60. But
Wow.
And 36 by 36 is another common size that I use. But I paint multiple images at the same time, at multiple canvases, because I'm not a wet on wet painter. I wait till every layer, and I paint up to 7 or 8 layers. So I always wait till one layer is completely dry before I use it. Plus, if you're painting on more than one image at one time, you don't get, agitated because you can't get one little area done. There's always an area in the painting that you're going, I didn't think this part out, or I don't have the proper reference for this one little corner, whatever. So you're always, sometimes you wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and your Rolodex in your brain is saying, "Oh, I caught it, I finally figured it out." But the fact that I paint in oil, and I do multiple layers, only because I don't paint wet on wet, because a lot of oil painters do, but I just don't. That's not my technique.
Yeah. So do you use some drying agents at all that help speed that process up a bit, or?
I used to when I first started, but I did. I don't need that, because I really do like the fact that I can set it aside and come back to it later, and it's like a fresh painting again when you bring it back.
Yeah, but when you work on 6 or 7 pieces, you can kind of go from one to the next, and while one's drying, you're working on the other ones, and wait till they tack up a little bit, and then you can move on.
Absolutely. And sometimes you might work on 3 pictures in one day. Like you'll go, you walk down the hall, you'll see another one, you go, "Oh, I'm going to fix that right now. I've got the color that I mixed, and that'll go in that painting." So, and I do mix a lot of colors. I enjoy that part of the oil painting.
Yeah, no, it's it's a process. I think everybody finds their own way of doing things, and the process. I used to have a sandwich when I'd come from student, and I still have my sandwich in my. I'm supposed to take a lunch break a little bit, and I had to go over this one painting. Pretty soon, you put your sandwich down, you got one bite out of it, and you're back working on your piece of work that you were thinking about all the time, and you found your sandwich didn't get eaten as when you planned anyway. You had a little bit of stuff on it, but it's fun. It's fun when you're immersed like that in your work. I mean, you try to find that zone, and most good artists have a zone. You get into that zone and you can't do anything wrong. Things just happen right because but if you get out of it for a while, it takes a while to get back into that. And I won't call it a happy moment, but it's just kind of like you're zoned in and you can focus completely on the piece of work that you're working on or series that you work on. And I found sometimes I get out of that zone from time to time. And I find, how do I get back into that again? And it's just hard work. It's usually just hard work.
And sometimes it just comes like you're just working away, and all of a sudden, bang, they'll go, wow, how did the last 3 hours go so fast? Like you're just so focused on doing your work. And you get into this mode, like you said, that all of a sudden you're going, how can it be 7 o'clock already? And like, you know, the last time you looked, it was 3 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, in the morning.
Yeah.
I've had to walk out of the studio sometimes and say, what time is it now? Had the lights on, right? And it's one of those things, you come back out and it's dark. And what the heck? But I think understanding that those things don't just happen. They're happenstances. They happen occasionally. And you get, some are just more prolific than others. Like there's times when people don't understand. The general public do not really understand that zoning in on things that an artist gets when they do in their work. And it's hard to explain to people the passion that it takes to get into that stage in the idea. And, you know, the skill set is a whole other thing. That's different. But it's like, you know, finding that. So what kind of artists, or who do you, I guess, emulate or not necessarily follow, but appreciate that you've seen? Like you mentioned Warhol and
well, I mean, I'm intrigued and inspired by so many artists. Like, you know, there's like books and books and books of different artists. But some of the modern ones, Peter Doig, who's a Canadian artist, he's British, but he lived in Canada for a number of years and then lived in Trinidad. But I'm fascinated by his work, and I saw a great exhibit of his work in Montreal a few years back. And the series, or you're going to see some imagery from Vancouver that, like you said earlier, about nostalgia. When I first moved to Vancouver was in 1978, and I was just coming from Regina. I went, my God, not to say that there wasn't neon signs in Regina, there was all across North America, but Vancouver used to have more neon signs than Vegas did. And when I first went there, and to go to Chinatown or whatever, I went, somehow I'm going to paint this. That far back, 1978, you know, and I didn't end up painting them until 2000. And I started painting the neon signs in 2006, 5 or 6. And the reason why I did it, just like the piece that's up right now, this is a corner in Montreal of a restaurant that disappeared. Like, you know, it was popular for a while and then all of a sudden it's gone. But I thought, and I said to my dealer in Vancouver at the time, I said, his name is Katz, Komodo Gallery. I said, I want to paint some corner stores that are disappearing and neon signs. And he said, that's an interesting idea. And one of the artists that since I first went back to school was Robert Cottingham. And he paints strictly neon signs in States. That's what he's known for. And he started painting them in 1965. And I thought, wow, I'm going to paint these pictures that I always, the Only or whatever, the restaurant in Vancouver, that are really well known, that have been around since the 40s or even earlier. And so as soon as I started painting them, the people in Vancouver that have been there, especially their whole life, that dined at a lot of these places, or, you know, they work right beside it, all of a sudden, hot commodity. All of a sudden I had a show and sold out. So we knew we were on a good idea, and Katz completely, he doesn't have a gallery right now, but I'm still in touch with him. I'm actually doing a commission piece right now of another nostalgic piece from Vancouver. And it's just, that's what people want. You know, they want things in their home that they can relate to. And being that I was in Vancouver total for 22 years, I know it very well, and I know a lot of people there. And to hear, why different people want different pieces, like I said, it's typically because they used to eat there, or they took their first date to that restaurant or whatever.
Right. This looks like a snippet of a Hopper painting. It just kind of like, it feels very Hopper-esque to me. And if you
Another huge inspiration to me is Edward Hopper.
yeah,
And,
if you had a woman sipping tea at that table, I'd say, oh, it's Hopper. It's just like one of the. He was a really, I wouldn't say voyeur, but he did like to see life in his buildings, and his life was stoic. It wasn't. I don't know if there were real happy moments like in his life. He had a very distressful life, but I think he caught pieces of Americana.
absolutely.
He really did have a way of catching, I guess, the moment of that time and that time frame, whether it be the gas stations or the city scenes or the people in the offices, and some of his pictures that do that. Do you do figurative work at all as well in your works, or are they mostly structures?
Well, like I said, I do corner stores, restaurants, cafes, and the corner store, which we're all across North America with those Coca-Cola buttons and stuff on them. And completely, a lot of people would say, well, it looks like a Hopper because, like I said, he was one of my biggest and still is inspirations. But the difference between he and I is he always, like you said, usually had a solo individual in that, and a lot of times, like you saw melancholy or some sadness in the painting. Like the person wasn't necessarily happy, although sometimes if there's two or three people, then it was more of a daytime scene in a restaurant or a theater, or like you said, a gas station. The difference between he and I, our colors are the same, but I never put a person in any of my paintings.
Yeah,
they're always just about a structure or a sign, a neon sign.
Yeah. This one feels like the cereal box, and there's a lot going on this page. I mean, doors and texture, and it's more monochromatic than your cereal box for sure. But I think you've captured a piece of a building that. Now, is this from Vancouver?
Yeah. So the Ovaltine Cafe has been around since 1942 in Vancouver. It's on East East.
It's almost like, do I want to go in there and get a cup of coffee? Is the cup going to be clean?
Absolutely. It's even today. It's a unbelievable restaurant. It's fantastic.
The hole in the wall. Yeah.
You might be a little bit more careful about the neighborhood, whatever, but it's a beautiful restaurant. And personally, I would encourage people to go there when they're visiting Vancouver.
Wow.
Because, as I said, it's from 1942. I wouldn't encourage them to go where I took this picture. This is the back alley. And as a postal worker with my truck, I would drive into Chinatown and, West Hastings and whatever, where I said, it was one of the worst areas in North America, but I found it really intriguing. And the reason why I went down the back alleys is because they were shortcuts. A lot of times the traffic jams or whatever. And I knew the city really well, and I could get from here to there. And the faster you got your job done at Canada Post, typically you could go home. So I always tried to find really, shortcuts. And I took this picture in the back alley, and there was people everywhere. But like I said, I don't paint pictures in there. It's probably not to visit the back alley, the old team.
Yeah, walking down back alleys in Vancouver, I don't know about that. But anyway, I think as a postal worker, you have access to, like you said, the streets, and you can find so much of us, we stay on the main road and we look left and right and forward. We only see those facades in the front. But sometimes when you have an opportunity like a postal work, you can go behind the scenes. You can see all the other stuff that's other people don't normally every day see, because it's sort of like if you don't get off the road to do a painting, you only paint what you see from the road, you miss so much. Like you've got to get off on those side roads. And I think you do that. You do the walk and the talk and take the photos. And so you do work from your own photo references that in these senses. Is that what you do?
For the most part, I do. I'll just say one thing about being a postal worker at that time, because I was driving a truck with Canada Post and I was wearing the uniform, obviously. I'll tell you, these poor down and outers that you encounter, they treated posties with complete respect. And I think it's because at some point in time, they had hard jobs. Something took them to where they were, and they became addicts of some sort. And it's really amazing. I could go around all the different areas and never ever be like, a lot of times I went, ooh, I don't know if I should be spending too much time driving through here or whatever, but treated with complete respect. It's really unbelievable. And I guess it's the uniform that they weren't afraid of. There's other people that have uniforms that they would go, time
Yeah.
to move out of the area or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it also is a humbling job. Delivering mail. It's a trusted job as
Yeah.
well. You're trusting with somebody else's messages and mail.
Yeah, and sometimes their check was delivered that way, so they can relate to you. And like I said, they may have had a job, they may have been a postal worker. It's really hard. What was the question you had asked me before I went into that?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
There's so many little things on the top of my head that I'm just curious about most of the time. But I think it was asking about, do you own photography? And
That's what it was. I have painted a few pictures that I haven't. They're long gone. The cafés or whatever. One was called the Lucky Strike Cafe, and I know a lot of photographers and stuff in Vancouver. So that's another thing. You'd never be afraid to ask someone. And I've asked a number of them, and I don't think I've ever been turned down, because I always give them the promise that I'll write on the back of the painting that this is photo reference, given permission by this photographer. And I always tell them also, whenever I'm going to promote it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I'm always going to put a link to their site and say, this is where this image was. But just like this one, this is by a photographer in the States named Stephen Fitch. And he, I got a hold of him through the internet, and I said, I would like to have permission to do this painting of yours. And he said, like, he saw my work, and he said, and I told him I'd give him credit, whatever. And I said, well, I'll do my take. So there was some other signage on this that I decided not to put on, to make it more of my painting that I'm using his reference. Yeah. So he was completely fine with it. And like I said, his name's on the back, and every time I promote it, it's promoted and linked to the site.
I think that's so credible to have that. I think images are so available now on the internet, and I've seen a number that have been picked up and used and reused. And I'm hoping the credits were given to the people that posted them originally as the photograph for the reference material. So artists, stay sincere to yourself and ask for a permission to reuse an image that somebody else has taken their energy and time to make. I think it's important that we keep the level up a little higher up the ladder, rather than just stealing images and trying to make stuff and copy it. And he said, reach out if you can. I think that's a really that's a credible thing to do, I think.
Absolutely. And I have had people rip my own imagery off and try to sell it on eBay. And I typically will go out to eBay and say, this is my work, and that is not my name on that painting, and they'll take it off. So, I mean, as an artist, you have to respect your fellow artists. And
there are quite a few artists out there now that are, I guess, so-called painting your style, but it's one of those things. It's sort of painting, I guess, similar imagery as to what you might paint, but I guess that's kind of that open.
Well, I think they see that I'm making a living at it, so why not try it? And
I think
in Vancouver.
Yeah. I think it's no different, I guess, than yourself or myself. You're going to, how do I make a living from it? And you say, oh, I like Warhol. And you're not painting Warhol, but he's inspired you, right? I think there's a difference.
Absolutely. And you have to look at as many artists as you can, because you get a little bit from every one of them. It's like going to school, and you have all these amazing teachers, and you can remember different things that the teachers pushed you at, because that's what that was their big thing. But you have to look at all the artists you can.
Yeah. There's another one. There's Bucking Bronc. What I love about this one is there's this signage in front of a mountain. Like, it's just so out there. It's not in a city scene. The signage isn't attached to a building, but there's this neon thing that's telling me about that environment in that area. And there's a mountain in behind it. There's a juxtaposition, I guess, the lack of words. There's a real contrast between the two. There's a nature, and then there's this mechanical man element that's involved in that same image, which is quite different than some of your other pieces, because these ones are city, right? You had a lot of those, and now this one is. What inspired this piece?
Okay, so this piece is it's all the paintings that I do of American neon. I call them Americana series, and this piece is in Boston in the gallery there. And the one thing also, when you're working on a show or whatever with the gallery, a lot of times the gallery owner or the curator of the gallery will work with you on, your exhibition and the series that you're going to do for them. So this is a famous bar in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And so I juxtaposed, like you said, I put the ski resort in the background. You can find this on the internet, lots of copies of this cowboy on the horse neon sign, but none with the background. Like it's fake. You can see the background, but it's way off in the distance. So I wanted to make it a painting that would be more interesting than just the neon sign. So you're right. It's not typically something that I would necessarily paint, but I'm really proud of it. I really, sometimes, like you said, sometimes you get a smile moment. You think, wow, it worked.
It really did. It's simple. It's simpler than the other pieces, but it's a powerful piece. I mean, just the rhythm of the horse bucking and the mountain and the nature. But one that we don't give a lot of real respect to is these neon guys who did the neon work and the signage. I mean, these guys are making classic branded logo type imagery. I mean, you work with neon, it's not easy. You got to blow that glass and you got to do a bunch of different things to get those shapes that you're doing. And some of them,
graphic, the way they've cut it out, the way they've designed it, they're unbelievable. Well, people actually collect neon signs now. And there's a neon museum in Las Vegas where they've restored a lot of the old neon signs. It's really an interesting place to go.
It's hard to find guys to fix neon because a lot of it isn't done. Like you said, the blowing the glass, getting the neon in the tubes for it to work and everything. That art was a 50s thing, like a 60s thing. And it's still used in more now. It's LED everything. It's not the same. It's just
no, it isn't.
The light that comes out of those tubes is different than neon or than LED. It just has a different flavor.
Yeah, another thing about neon signs is they buzz. The gas that's going through them when you're right beside them, they're making this buzzing noise. So they're alive. There is a company in Vancouver that does restore neon signs. So thank God. It would be really nice if they were brought back. But like you said, there's a lot it takes to build one of these, and obviously they're quite expensive to reproduce.
They probably would be in the day. Excuse me. So here we get in some of your, like we're talking people that I think people in, I guess, major cities have got older sections of their city that these little vignettes, they say, oh, I remember that little Chinese grocery store or that neighborhood grocery stores, those, they were part of their life, and part of that neighborhood. And I see this, not unlike the cereal box. There's a lot of stuff going on. Him talking to his audience that wants to buy in his store. I got tomatoes on sale today. I got this. I got milk. Don't forget, get your milk here. All those signs. But to put it into a picture, I think it is encapsulating a moment. It might even be an era more so than a moment. There's a that store might have been there for 30 years, servicing by one same owner or a family that owned that business, So
absolutely. This corner store actually, I think it was there more than 60 years, and a number of photographers, including Fred Herzog, is known for taking really great shots of this corner drugstore or grocery store. And in 1978 when I was there, it was still there. I don't know when it closed down, but yeah, it's like they were all over North America. All these little corner stores with their signage.
Yeah, and a lot of that signage that was given to them by Coca-Cola to be on that building. That was part of the deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll pay for the sign, and we'll put your name on it, and 7-Up did the same. And it was like free to the grocery store, but it was classic advertising. Budgets were just insane. They those Pepsi and the Coke and all those people, 7-Ups, they paid a lot of money. And they knew what grocery stores needed. They needed signage, and they wanted their name on that outside surface. But it became part of that era.
Absolutely. And can you imagine, like, the expense of all the, like you said, they were all metal signs, but the fact that they sometimes were on buildings for decades, they obviously paid for themselves. I mean, that's why Coke did it. That's why 7-Up did it.
Yeah. This one's been a little bit simpler in design. They didn't have Coca-Cola on their product, but
so this is a restaurant in Vancouver that closed down, I believe, about 10 years ago, and it had been around for decades, and really popular. People would go there, day, night. Like, you go there for breakfast, you go there for afternoon, you go there for dinner. Really popular restaurant, and like you said, you can tell it's from a different era, even from the name and the graphics and whatever. It's it was full of life.
I love that it bleeds off the left and the right, and you still get the feeling this little business is sandwiched between these other bigger buildings, right? Even though it's not physically showing a building on the left and the right of it, and it's sort of like this little tiny house with all these big houses next to it, and it's the last house going to get infilled. They're going to be knocking it down, but it's like there's this little flat roof diner here, and the word diner, even that is it's not used as much. That's an era word.
That's indicative of the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah. And they were typically open almost 24/7. They had the early crowd, and they had the late evening crowd and the day crowd as well. We're going to move on here, but this one is
This is another restaurant in Vancouver that no longer exists, and there's a white lunch has connotations that nowadays you wouldn't call your restaurant that, more than likely, but it's one of my favorite signs that actually the figures used to revolve around.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, another thing about these neon signs, a lot of times they had a lot of mechanics to them that made them even more interesting. And like I said, you always, when you walked underneath them and stuff, you heard the buzz, and if it was raining out, they were just the light captured in the evening or, dusk, or so vibrant. And, obviously it rains a lot in Vancouver. It would really add to the look. But this is an image that I borrowed from a photographer. He was so kind to lend it to me.
Yeah, in some of those early years, when neon came in and signage, I mean, some of those streets were so full of signage. I mean, after a while, you couldn't see the business that you were intended to see. Initially, they were to draw attention. Well, when everybody starts saying, pay attention to me, with all their different types of signage, like Vegas had it, and I think, any major city, and you go down Main Street, and they were just, the whole street lit up with this cartoon of stuff. There was just everything.
And all the movement they had.
Some was stuff
like Vegas, especially those neon signs were 150 feet high. I mean, the dunes and stuff, they were huge.
Yeah, but I love this piece because the background is really neutral in the gray tones, and that cup just really pops off the page. And I love the silhouettes that would go around it. I almost can envision how that would happen. That's what I like about this piece.
Yeah,
and they rotate. I could almost see those little characters going around, sort of like the old cuckoo clock where the little people came out. The mechanization that they had in it. Yeah,
for sure. That piece, the last piece, I did it twice. A lot of times, I will do the other side of it because there's two sides to a sign or multiple layers on a sign.
Okay.
And if if one works, you go, well, I painted it, it's sold. Maybe I should paint another one. And so I do. Often I'll paint two different. I never do the very same image twice, so it's not fair to the person that's collecting my work that they know that they have a unique piece if you do a one-off.
Yeah. So does some of the gallery advise some of that to you a little bit about when putting a show together to do different things?
For sure, you always have a conversation. Either they'll ask you, what are you working on? And they'll go, oh, that's really great. But I think they almost always review each piece that's going to go into the gallery, which ones are stronger or whatever, which ones, go together as a whole. But absolutely, there's always some kind of conversation that goes on either from the start or when, like you said, if you approach a gallery and you have a selection of work, they're not necessarily going to have the same vision that you do, that they want all the pieces you're offering them at the same time. But they may go, let's try 3 or 4 of these, or let's have a show. Let's try. I'll pick 10 of these out, or we'll pick them together. So that's the advantage when you have a lot of pieces, and you think, oh, am I doing the right thing? I've got 120 paintings finished, and I can't get in a gallery. Well, you just have to be persistent, and you have to realize that it's not an easy road, but it's a very rewarding road. It's the opportunity to be a full-time artist or even a part-time artist. It's so rewarding, and it puts your brain in a different mode every time you're painting, and the conversations you have with people about your work. It's really amazing. I've been very, very fortunate.
Yeah, and you got to realize that not every gallery is a right fit for the artist, right? So you got to hunt around and find the gallery that fits you a little bit in your work. And if you've got a good, strong style of things that you like to paint, it helps stand out. Sometimes that's what the gallery is looking for. But I don't remember the artist Genn, Robert Genn.
Absolutely.
And he had a saying. He said, "You need apples in your apple cart."
Yeah.
If your apple cart is empty, you haven't got anything to show people. You need variety, and you need volume, and you need the same kind of apples in a way, right? A good solid following of work. You need to have that.
Robert was amazing because he gave so much advice on his blog or his site that he had. I'm trying to think of it.
His letters were amazing.
He really helped. Like I followed him constantly. He gave strong advice to you when you're wondering, am I going down the right road? Is this what I should be doing?
I think Sarah still keeps his site up, so
that's great.
I think people can still go there for back issues of his letters and his advice. It was just I couldn't imagine it. Twice a week he produced that newsletter.
His letter was called the
Painter's Keys.
Absolutely, yeah, that was it. Yeah.
I had a great online conversation with him in just 2001 or something. We had just started Artists in Canada, and he took a half an hour out of his day, and we had a great conversation just by phone in the day. And he was just a very humanized person. Like he just, beautiful person to talk to. Very sharing. Yeah, he was very sharing. So here's this is your real typical Chinese restaurant. And every city has these. I mean, I'm sure all across Canada, we all have these, and hopefully they're not going to fade out and disappear, but I think a lot of times the strip malls have really removed some of this local stuff that was happening independently within our cities. It's not the same, everything's just not quite the same. The feeling, that you'd go into this building and have your meal.
Yeah.
And the feeling of authenticity, like it's going to be good food, but it's, you're going to get a hot dog and hamburger there. I hope not. It's like, I hope you don't.
Yeah.
Try something different. Huh?
Yeah.
Get some dim sum or something. Do something a little different. But
a lot of times people think, oh well, it's just it's a dump or whatever. But typically those restaurants, they were serving like really genuinely good food.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. This nice little hotel shot here.
So this still exists, and they've had many people from Valdy to John Lee Hooker. Like it's on Granville Street in Vancouver, and really popular, like live music place to go to and drink, whatever. But so this was one of the first ones that I did when I started doing the corner stores and the old nostalgic imagery.
Yeah. Are you back? You're back doing buildings now and structures? Is that what you're kind of doing in a real estate?
I'm still doing neon, but I it's funny that you say that because I I take a lot of photographs myself, and I have a selection of work that I always think, well, I'm going to do this, whatever. And buildings are definitely something, especially the old style building, obviously, or the
Right.
ones with all this unique architecture is something that I'm going to focus on.
They sort of like the doorways and doors and the way the windows sit on a building and the structure of the roofs.
Yeah.
I think I encourage people to follow Will Rafuse on his Instagram, and you can see what he's doing today. We've got I when I put this one up, I went, oh my gosh, I love this building, and I almost know this building because it's only about an hour away from where I live.
Wow.
But it was kind of the Banff of the area in the day in the 20s and the 30s. It was where people went for the weekend for these big dances. And we've had a number of artists that have, David Thalberger has painted this, and a number of other people have painted these classic dance halls. This one still exists. It has a horsehair floor. If you're ever in the Watrous, Manitou area in Saskatchewan, you definitely have got to go and visit this building. Usually on the weekend, there's still a dance. You mentioned bands playing in the hotel. Every major band has played in this building if they've been in that area. Everything from an accordion band to rock and roll. It's quite a facility.
What a wonderful history, that they have. It's so rich. It's like when you say that every band that you know of has played there.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. I've been there to see this place, and it's funny, growing up in Regina, I was completely inspired also by David Thalberger, his realism type paintings. And I always remember when he painted this picture, I thought, I went there and I went, I'm going to do my version of it. And one of my friends in Vancouver, he's a photographer, Kevin Boyle, he did a really amazing photograph of it around the same time I was painting it. It was kind of interesting. And I don't think either one of us talked about it, but that we both came up with the same imagery.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's very inspiring to see. There's quite I like this across Canada connection that happens in your work. I mean, I think that's part of what the magic is that with your painting, people can relate to right across the country, and even into North America and the States as well. They can see that happens down in their towns and cities. But it's hard to find a product that everybody can sort of say, I've been there. I've got one similar to that. I've seen something similar. And I think you're onto something. I appreciate you spending the time with us. And I mean, we could talk for hours about our stuff here, but I think it's to start. It's been a good conversation. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, so did I, Paul. I really appreciate this opportunity.
We'll bring David back in here and see if he fell asleep or whether he's still awake.
Yeah, really.
There he is. There's David.
Well, yeah. What can I say? You have a new fan. Well,
thank you very much.
Yeah, it's just all the things that I would want in an artist.
That's
and
nice.
We've had a lot of artists on the show, and I'm not just saying that. But yeah, I mean, my father was a chartered surveyor. I spent most of my youth looking at buildings he was either going to build or had already built. So I've got a lot of cement in my blood, it would seem, and then this obsession with buildings, I still have.
And you live in a wonderful city.
Yeah. So yeah. Wow. What can I say?
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I am going to ask you which is really important to everybody, can you give us an idea, a guesstimate of what sort of price people would have to pay if they want to purchase one of your wonderful paintings?
Well, depending on size, obviously, they range from about $5,000 to $14,000.
Yeah.
Canadian.
Okay. Canadian, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm told that's real money. I'm not sure myself, but I'm told that's real money.
Well, I feel very fortunate, like I said earlier, that that a lot of people have enjoyed what I've done and encouraged me and helped me out by buying my work and displaying it on their home. Other people see it and they go, oh, I wouldn't mind having one of them. Where did you get that from or whatever? So it's amazing. It's amazing how many people get your work and promote your work. They promote it for you because they you know, they put a little bit of money down. But like I said in the very beginning, from that guy that walked through Stanley Park, he said to me, you know, it's really amazing. These people that are supporting you, they want to see you do well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that with most artists as well, you know, just feel the confidence to get out there and show your stuff. I mean, where you start today is all, like I said before, not where you're going to be tomorrow, but it's definitely a step towards where you're going. And I think that's really important to do as artists. You have to do your own promotion. You really have to.
You're the boss.
Exactly. I love the thought of that, because I think a lot of artists are led by other things other than themselves, and I think you have to make those decisions for yourself and get out there and do it. Well, thanks, David.
Yeah, and I could just encourage everybody, all the artists in Canada, because I know we have a big support. People watch the show in Canada. If you're an artist and you want to be interviewed by Paul, you know, contact him directly, and then you know, come on and promote yourself. Because to be honest, gentlemen, as we all know, nobody else is going to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Will, for being with us. Thank you, Paul, for coming back to us. We're not on our third year now, fourth year we're doing together.
Third year. We're finishing up our third year. So I took a bit of hiatus in the summer, just took the summer off. But we're back for the fall. We got another strong artist tomorrow, next week as well. And Terry Graff is going to join us. And then in a week after that, we're going to do a summation of our, I'll advertise there, the Great Canadian Art Show. Little promo. We just finished doing the awards, and we're going to talk about the show with our jury members, which is going to be an exciting thing. They're going to tell us the process of how the jurying process went and what kind of work was show. We'll show some of the winning pieces, and we're hopefully inspire some artists to, you know, definitely join Artists in Canada. We appreciate that, and we'll help you where we can. Appreciate it, Will. And
thank you very much.
No.
Yeah, just like to everybody, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to know more about Paul's fantastic art show, then you can find his details and have a look at the Artists in Canada website.
It's on the homepage.
Sorry, Paul?
It's on our homepage. So they just click it.
On the homepage.
Actually, for this last week, they can still go in and vote. We have a People's Choice section to it. So people can actually go in and vote on their favorite work of over 100. There's over 300 pieces of art in that show. So take your time. You get 3 votes. You're allowed to vote for 3 different artists and do it. And then it'll all be tallied up, and we will go through the numbers in 2 weeks from there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, until next week, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye from Canadian Art Today.